So we finished off on page 21 on There's a Solution in the Big Book. We are actually going to start on page 20. Now, these are commonplace observations that drinkers hear all the time. That's where we're going to start, and we'll kind of roll into where we finished off the other day. And hopefully, if Gord and I can keep our chatting to a minimum, we can get through this chapter. Alex, what are you looking at? She knows that we can't control that.
That's a big maybe. Yeah.
So yeah, questions are valued. No question is a dumb question, because a lot of people get a lot of value out of your dumb question. And this is a hard illness to understand in many ways. So the more questions, the better, in a way, not the whole session. Okay. Okay, Gord, let's do it, bud.
All right. Now, these are commonplace observations on drinkers, which we hear all the time. Back of them or behind them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. We see that these expressions refer to people whose reactions are very different from ours. Moderate drinkers have little trouble in giving up liquor entirely. If they have good reason for it, they can take it or leave it alone. Then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time if a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative. This man can also stop or moderate. Although he may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention, he can do it. But what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker, but at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. Here's a fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. He's a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature, but little. He may be one of his finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. He has a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when some important decision must be made or engagement kept. He is often perfectly sensible and well-balanced concerning everything except liquor. But in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. Is this ringing a bell for anybody here? Yeah, me too. He often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, and then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. He's the fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated he ought to sleep the clock around, yet early the next morning he searches madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before. If he can afford it, he may have liquor concealed all over his house to be certain no one gets his entire supply away from him to throw down the wastepipe. As matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-powered sedative and liquor to quiet his nerves so he can go to work. Then comes a day when he simply cannot make it and gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedative, which to taper off. Then he begins to appear at hospitals and sanitariums. This is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic, as our behavior patterns vary. But this description should identify him roughly. I think we probably stop there, right?
Okay. Go for it, bro.
All right. I'm going to go back to the top and start by telling you that what I'm about to read, I know nothing about. Come on in, guys. I know absolutely nothing about the next couple sentences. So I'm going to start it now. These are commonplace observations on drinkers, which we hear all the time. behind them, back of them, the people that are making these commonplace observations is what that means. It backs a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. Ignorance meaning what? Exactly that. A lack of knowledge or a lack of education. It's not the guy's being so ignorant. It's just ignorance meaning he doesn't know any better. They don't know any better when they talk shit about drinkers, right? Because they're not that person. We see that these expressions refer to people whose reactions are very different from ours, meaning what? Right, normal drinkers, normal people that either don't drink because they just don't want to, or people that can have a drink and put it down. I watch my wife get poured a glass of wine at Christmas, for example, because we're coming up on Christmas, and she'll have a couple sips with dinner, and then I'm start helping clear the table, sometimes. I don't always do it, I'm not going to lie. But sometimes I'll help clear the table, or the kids will be clearing the table, and I'll notice that my wife's glass of wine is still sitting there, half full. It drives me batty. I don't understand it. But it also drives them batty, not understanding why we can't just stop. And that's what it's referring to here, right? They don't understand. And so we turn into the evil guys, the insane guys. Like, why doesn't he just quit? He's got a great girl at home. He's got 2 kids. Frothy emotional appeal seldom suffices. Well, that's what it means. These people are the ones that are doing the frothy emotional appeal. They want us to just do what they can do naturally. Just stop. Stop screwing up your life. I don't know how to do that.
Gord, I'd like to add something.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, great points. But there's also one thing, like the phenomenon of craving, right? It's a phenomenon for a reason. And it's hard to prove through science that actually happens to us. But earlier in this chapter, it explains many things for which we could not otherwise account in the doctor's opinion. And that's really what we're talking about. Like, these are commonplace observations which we hear all the time. And part of these people that are ignorant, that don't understand us, is our typical medical fraternity in our world right now. And they're taught certain things about addiction that haven't worked for you guys, right? Has anyone seen the doctor for their addiction and had failure in their process, right? A lot of us. And then we think we're just fucked up and things don't work for us. But then we come here and we hear certain things in the rooms and it's like, holy fuck, that's me. It explains many things for which I could not otherwise account. So we're like a different breed that is hard to prove through science. And then the other part that's hard to prove is, I think, the ego that we have that's like on overdrive, right? And it's our instincts and we're always trying to grab something more. And I think the program and the steps, they actually regulate us and they get us to a normal state. As long as we work the program, we can stay in a normal state-ish, right? And so I just wanted to add that, right?
I'm glad that you added that, because I wasn't thinking along the lines of doctors and stuff, because I believe that we covered a lot of that in the doctor's opinion. The paragraph that preceded where we started this morning was about people and what they said. So I'm really glad that you reminded us of that. You're absolutely right. Doctors, psychologists, wives, children, parents, none of them understand this. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And that's coming from a guy that's 45 years, right? So I think that's neat that he wants to say, yeah, sometimes I forget. I forget what it's like being 3 months, and struggling and going back out. Yeah. Pretty neat stuff. So he goes on to talk about the moderate drinkers. Again, I know nothing about that. I may have been this at one time, but I don't believe I was. I immediately started thinking about the next time I could drink after the first time I drank. So I don't think I ever was that guy. Hard drinker. Basically, that is pointing out what? That some guys drink heavy, getting a little bit of shit. Maybe they drink too much and they're sick, or they get skinny because they're drinking too much, and they go into benders, but they meet the right girl that, you know, changes their mind. You know, the right doctor that says, dude, your blood pressure is really high and your health is declining. Or maybe they get thrown in some cells, you know, but they don't end up going, you know, to the pen like some of us, right? Because they just shut it down. Given sufficient reason, it says, you know, they can shut it down or moderate. I don't know about you, but I know nothing about being able to moderate any of it. I mean, you give me one, and now we're back to the phenomenon of craving. I'm gone. So then it starts to talk about the real alcoholic. Is anyone here a real alcoholic? Yeah? How about anyone on Zoom? Are you real alcoholics? How about you guys at the pen? Are you real alcoholics? I mean, I'm never going to make that decision for anybody.
I will.
You will.
I do.
I won't, though. I absolutely won't. But I'll tell you something. There's a couple. We'll talk about this in a future chapter. There's a couple real easy questions and a way to figure it out, right? But I'm the real deal. When I use, I end up in the alleys, sucking up, you know, muddy water. Right,
I'm glad you said muddy water.
Yeah,
My brain went.
You sick fucker. Who am I up here with? Oh my God. No, I'm just kidding. I know exactly who I'm up here with. At some stage, his drinking career becomes to lose all control as liquor consumption. And I don't know about you guys, but the booze, you know, stopped working, so things got harder and harder and harder. Right, and I ended up in worse places and worse places. Hell, I've ended up in better places and tried to manage it, and only to pull it all back down on me, like it says here again. Right, I built a life with my wife and my kids and my career, and I was white knuckling it the whole time. But I ended up pulling it all back down on myself, and that makes me the real deal. You know, I'm in a position where I need spiritual help. And that's what this chapter's starting to gently nudge us towards. Because I don't know about you guys, but I didn't like people forcing God on me, when even though I really needed them to. You know, I really needed that, but for some reason my ego wouldn't allow it. So this chapter, I find, gently starts nudging us towards spiritual help, right? The Jekyll and Hyde. I love how it talks about that, because I was that guy. I excelled in my career. I could take people out and party with them, and take guys to Radium and party like there was no tomorrow, and get lots of business and do really big things and be a top performer. But what nobody knew was, you know, I was also doing drugs when they weren't looking, right? To keep me on, you know, keep me going. I was very skilled at talking to people, skilled at marketing, and skilled at running projects. But my alcoholism always took control of me eventually. Which it says right here, he uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. The fellow that goes to bed so intoxicated, he starts sleeping the clock around. The next paragraph or so, I'm going to let you talk about, because honestly, I didn't drink like that. I started drinking, and then I was into the dope, right? So, and there was no sleeping. I don't know. There was no going to bed. I remember too many mornings hearing the birds come out, and that's when I would go, oh, God, that sound that today I love, by the way. I love the sound of birds, but I hated it back then. I hated it so much. Yeah, you guys know, you know. So I'm going to let you chat about that stuff. Billy?
Okay. I don't really want to chat about that.
I didn't think so.
But I do want to chat about being one of the finest fellows in the world and let him drink for a day. He frequently becomes disgustingly, even dangerously antisocial. Whenever I take someone through that part of the book, a lot of times what they think is, oh, the person who isolates and pulls the blinds down and isolates, and that's it. Well, there's many antisocial behaviors that we will engage in, right? And some of those behaviors are like crime, that's antisocial. Violence is antisocial. Isolating and pulling the blinds down is antisocial. Like there's many antisocial behaviors. Prostituting is antisocial. Seeing hookers is antisocial. Like these are all antisocial behaviors that we will go to. That I know I went to many of those, right? And so antisocial has a broader spectrum than what just pulling down the blinds in a fucking living room and fucking ignoring your phone, right? So that's important to note. He is often perfectly sensible, well-balanced concerning everything except liquor, but in that respect, he is incredibly dishonest and selfish, and often possesses special abilities, skills, aptitudes, promising career. So, like for me, I was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I was actually pretty sane and normal, and I had many skills like Gord, and I built a business, and then you put one hoot in me. Like at first, it wasn't that bad. Like when I first started using crack or alcohol, it wasn't that bad. And I actually enjoyed it, right? It actually, when I first smoked crack, it launched me into the fourth dimension. And I was like, fuck, this is what I've been looking for, man. Like for real. And then after a while, I was just the slave to it. And then it just made me like, the minute I had the hoot, I'm like, fucked. Like I couldn't look at you in the eye. I didn't want to look at you in the eye. I couldn't be around you. Like I was just fucked. And I had to be alone, right? Because I couldn't even interact with other human beings. If my lighter ran out and I had to go to 7-Eleven, holy fuck, my heart was racing. Yeah, oh yeah, right? Anyone hear that? Right? Like, Jesus, fuck, man. Like, that was one of the scariest moments of my life is going to 7-Eleven in the daylight. Right?
I just gave a homeless guy $5 getting out of my truck because I was watching him try and light his lighter, and I know what that's like. It's terrifying.
So these guys out on the streets out here doing that shit like out in the open all day long, I'm like, they're just so immune to it now or something. I can't relate with that, right? Fucking sitting at the bus stop on the train just doing it like out in the open. It's so fucking crazy now, right? But us as a society has kind of changed how we view it, and it's almost like we just let it happen. But it's such an epidemic now, what else do you do? Right? So, we're kind of in a funny spot in our world, in our society today. And then I don't really want to talk about the waste pipe or the sleeping the clock around, but what I will talk about is this is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic. That's not exactly what it looks like, as our behavior patterns vary. Like my experience as an addict alcoholic might be different than Chris's, but it doesn't really matter. When we can kind of see what our patterns are and what we're doing, that's what's most important. And like as a sponsor, and I'll go into a bit of sponsorship on this one. As a sponsor, when I get to continually work with somebody, I get to know how they are, right? And I get to see how their patterns are what they are. And I can call them out. So it's really important for me to keep the same sponsor so that I can be called out on my alcoholic mind, right? Because that's what causes my problems, even in sobriety. The alcoholic life is the normal one, even in sobriety, right? Am I fucking resentful? Am I judging? Am I fucking miserable? Am I fucking in conflict with people? Page 52, we agnostic, where you look at the bedevilments, I call it step 0 promises. How many of the step 0 promises are in my life today? That is a barometer that'll tell me how I'm doing in my recovery today. And I'll tell you, a lot of people in the program are living with fucking 6 out of those fucking step 0 promises constantly. Why? Because they want to practice the principles in all of their affairs. The problem with self-willing principles in your affairs is it's still fucking based in self. So you're still willing honesty. You're willing forgiveness. You're willing these things. That doesn't really remove it. And there's a line in step 7, to be willing to work for humility takes most of us a long fucking time. A whole lifetime geared to self-centeredness will not be set in reverse at once. Rebellion dogs are every step at first. The rebellion dogs are the defective character, and they're there, barking at you, not letting you get past the resentment, past the judgment, past the fucking hating the world, or whatever the fuck it is, right? And when I live like that, it's not a fucking fun place to live, right? And then I'm always reactive with the world. I'm not responsive to what's happening around me. I'm reactive. And that's, to me, not a way that I want to live, right? And the program, the step 10 process, having a sponsor, especially sponsorship, but being sponsored to it, all has a piece to play in the understanding peace. Knowing peace and understanding serenity and all that stuff that seems like a fucking bunch of bullshit, but it's really not, right? So that's an important little piece that I like to take into sponsorship. That's it. Where did you finish reading?
Exactly there.
Right there?
Yeah.
So why does he behave like this? If hundreds of experiences have shown them that one drink means another debacle with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it he takes one drink? Why can't he stay on the water wagon? What has become the common sense and willpower that he sometimes displays with respect to other matters? Perhaps there will never be a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently from normal people. And in the respect also with defective character, in many respects, we will act differently with respect to other people. Like my mom doesn't act like me when I was very untreated in regards to anger or how reactive I am. Like I have a mind that's just, it's always on the fucking defensive, ready to go, right? My mom and my grandma and other people in my life, they weren't like that, right? So we react differently than normal people in these ways too. And I love taking step 1 in the defective character. When I do like a design for living set of steps with somebody, everywhere it says drink in here, I'm putting think. The alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first think. And it's the think that sets off the emotion that sets off the reaction, right? And, you know, I hear all the time in like different modalities of recovery, oh, you know, feelings are everything. Feelings aren't fucking everything. Feelings aren't reality, man. Right? We can create our reality out of the feelings, but how do we quit that? Well, you got to be aware of the think. And if you don't do something with the think, which is what step 10 does, then you will continue to take the long road to humility and not really working hard for it. But if you don't really know the difference between step 10 in the book and step 10 on the wall, or step 10 in the book and step 10 coming out of treatment, you're fucked. Because it takes a long time. And I'll talk about step 10 quickly. There's 2 step 10s, right, that are bullshit, that are infiltrating in AA. And it actually, in my opinion, it kills people because step 10 is the keys to the kingdom, really, okay? So 1 is promptly admit that you're wrong. And you can do that, but why are you going to admit you're wrong and then you're going to make an amend? And it's usually out of guilt. Self-centered fucking guilt. So now you're practicing a principle, self-willing, an amend out of your own guilt. But that's not what we do, right? That process should go to a sponsor right now, right? And then the other one is doing a step 10 out of the treatment centers. And treatment centers have infiltrated our rooms, right? And that's not a bad thing. I'm not getting mad at treatment centers, so don't fucking get mad at me, treatment centers. But they do step 10s doing a nightly inventory. So everyone in the room, a new guy, will think that that's what a step 10 is. That is not step 10. Step 10 is in the book, and it's hidden in between all the fluffy shit. But it's a life-changing process. And it's a discipline process. And it's like willing without reservation and trying to do it all the time process. And that's an important thing that we'll get to, that I'll mention over and over and over, all through the big book study. Because by the time this big book study's done, like I got a call from Audrey. Anyone knows Audrey? She called me today and she's like, fuck, your big book studies just rattle my brain. She's like, I hear you in my head, right? That's the point. That's the point. I'm hoping that my fucking stupid voice is in your head at some point when you're doing something dumb that might help you, right? It's true in a way, right? It sounds a little arrogant, but it's true.
I see people on Zoom going, yeah, that's me. Right on.
Dion and Crystal, fuck you guys. Okay. Where was I? We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from the drink, as he may do for months or years, he acts much like other men. We're equally positive that once he takes alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens. Allergy. Both in the body and the mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. The cycle we're talking about is, back in the doctor's opinion, the alcoholic cycle. He's restless, irritable, discontent, unless he can experience a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking the first few drinks. As he succumbs to the desire, fails to resist because he doesn't have the power to choose, because he lives in a state of restless, irritable discontent, also known as the malady, also known as self, and he doesn't have the power, so he puts it in his body. And then he goes on the spree, emerges remorseful, firm resolution not to do it again, and it's repeated over and fucking over and over. That's the cycle. And these observations that we just looked at would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink. But it's not academic or pointless because he always takes the first fucking drink, right? Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centers in his mind. The allergy's not the most important part of this illness. The most important part of the illness is the think. Is the restless, irritable discontent. Is my inability to leave it alone. That's the most important part. So that centers in my mind. When we talked about, in the doctor's opinion, moral psychology, when Amber Lee and Lee were here, and I got that definition from Amber Lee in her psych books, and it was egoism to altruism. That's what moral psychology is. It's going from ego, which is fear-based, to altruism, which is love-based. And that's the process that eliminates the thought to drink or the inability to leave it alone. But the ego has to be identified in the moment, which is what step 10 does. It identifies self and then gives you a process to remove it. And does it get removed like fully right off the bat? No. It's millimeter by millimeter, and it depends on your willingness deep down inside. And for different types of alcoholics, like the depressive versus the egocentric, depends how much pain you have, but I find the depressive has a harder time with getting rid of it and getting on the right track than, say, the egocentric alcoholic. So more work is required by somebody that's a depressive. It's shitty to say, you know, if you're depressive, but it's the fucking truth from what I've seen. So, rather than his body, if you ask him why he started on the last bender, the chances are he will offer you one of 100 alibis. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility. This is fucking gold. For anyone that's sponsoring or you're collecting data watching us, this is great stuff. Sometimes these excuses have a certain plausibility, but none of them really make sense in the light of the havoc the alcoholic's drinking bout creates. They sound like the philosophy of the man who, having a headache, beats himself on the head with a hammer so he can't feel the headache. If you draw this fallacious reasoning to the attention of an alcoholic, he will laugh it off or become irritated and refuse to talk. Once in a while, he may tell the truth. That's not only true in this area, that's true in untreated alcoholism. And the truth, strange to say, is that he usually has no more an idea why he took the first drink than you have. A lot of the people that I work with, like maybe in the nations or here or there, that don't really understand the illness, a lot of us have way more knowledge and information about the illness because we go to meetings and we're around people and we're trying to get well, so we're interested in getting well. Other people don't really understand what's wrong in some of the places that I work. So I'm like, well, you used again. He's like, yeah, my fucking wife, or yeah, my kids, or yeah, my job. And, you know, but when I really ask him, well, why do you think you really drank? Ask him 100 questions and they're like, I don't know. But at first, they might become irritated and refuse to talk because they're pushing away and they don't want to fucking go there. But eventually they got to go there or they will never go there, right? So it's just really interesting to watch alcoholics and addicts when they use and you start talking to them and they'll always have excuse. And some of the excuses have a certain plausibility, makes a little bit of sense, but it never really makes sense in the light of what really fucking happens. Like if I was to know Hector for all those years that you were on the street and I was fucking talking to you and I'm like, dude, why'd you use? But you didn't have a good reason. You wouldn't really give me an answer because you didn't really know, right? Now you know a lot more than you did. And you got an answer. Why do you think you used? Yes. Boom. How many months are you? 6.5 months. How many years did you spend on the streets? 22 years of addiction took you to the streets. You've been in the rooms and you just came to the rooms. You didn't even go to treatment first. And you just came to the room. I remember seeing you every fucking time I was there. Thought you had a bed in the back. But he listened and he learned about his disease. And then I asked him the question right now and he said, I was spiritually unfit. Boom, that is it. Why? Because we have a spiritual illness that requires a spiritual solution. And ever since you walked into the room, you didn't need treatment, you didn't need all the things, although you did go to treatment after you were sober a while, because you listened to people's suggestions and thought, okay, the way I run my life is probably not good. I'm going to listen to somebody fucking else. And now you're 6 months sober and life's fucking changed a lot for you, right? And I could go right down the fucking list here, but we'll just stick with you. Once in a while, he may tell the truth. Strange to say, usually has no more an idea why he took the first drink than you have. Some drinkers have excuses which they are satisfied with part of the time, but in their heart of hearts, they do not know why they do it. Once this malady has a real hold on them, they are a baffled lot. And they will typically make the decision to drink themselves to death. I don't want to get sober. I'm just going to drink, and I am an alcoholic, and I don't give a fuck what you say. I am a drug addict, and I'm just going to do this. Or suicide is a pretty pervasive thought most of the time. There is the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game, but they often suspect they are down for the count. And for me, in my second bout when it was crack, and I had my business, and I was going downhill, I thought I was going to beat the game. And I kept trying to beat the game. And then I got to this point when I lost my house and I lost all my money and I really had nothing. It actually came to me when I was in Slave Lake one day and I looked in the mirror and I remember looking up NA in the on Google, and I was going to go to NA because I really wanted help and I didn't know what the fuck was wrong with me. I was so scared to go to my first meeting because I was worried I'd lose my job. I was worried I'd see somebody. So I never went at all, ever. But I looked in the mirror this one day and I thought drug addicts were worse than alcoholics. And I knew I was an alcoholic from before, but now I'm a drug addict. So I looked in the mirror and I said, you're a fucking drug addict. And that was like a deep level concession telling myself I was fucked. But I didn't know still anything about my illness, so I just kept doing what I thought I knew what was right. And I thought I was making the choice to use. It wasn't until I came to the program where I realized I never had the power of choice in my disease after a while. It chose me because of my unfit spiritual conditioning. Once that clicked for me, it was a game changer. But I never would have known unless I hung around and listened like Hector did, right? Did you have a question, Chris? No? You're just scratching? Okay. Often suspect they're down for the count, and I did. How true this is, and few realize in a vague way that their families and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal. But everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will rouse himself from his lethargy and surge his power of will. The tragic truth that if the man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. He has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into the state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. Again, at a certain point in the drinking or drugging of every alcoholic or addict, he passes into the state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. This tragic situation has already arrived practically in every case long before it is suspected. So you cross that line way back there. By the time you fucking get there, it's way too late. It is way too late. Okay, I'll stop there. You want to add anything?
No, I'll simplify, maybe. Basically, we've talked about the physical allergy and the spiritual malady, right? And it's basically confirmed that just now that once we drink, we're screwed. That's the physical allergy. And now it's talking about the obsession, right? It's talking about that delusion that we all go through that leads us to an insane thought, which is what? Exactly. That is the thought. That's the insanity. It will be okay for me to take a drink or a drug today, right now. And Bill talked about that being followed by a whole bunch of plausible excuses. We come up with reasons. I have many, many reasons. None of them, given what happens, are actually good enough to be insane and have a drink, but they're good enough for me. And once this malady, this sickness has a hold on us, we just have no idea what to do, right? I mean, that's simplified. Bare bones what we've talked about so far. If I put it in me, I'm screwed. Why do I keep putting it in me then? Because our brain doesn't let us live. I need something bigger than that, right? That's it. That's all I'm going to add right now.
Okay, I left you some juicy shit.
You left me some real juicy shit, yeah. The fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, everyone knows what that means, right? For reasons we still can't figure out, have lost the power of choice and drink. What'd you just say to me? We're powerless. I don't have the power to turn my brain off. Our so-called willpower, which is the power that I don't have anymore, becomes practically non-existent. We are unable at certain times to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force, with enough force to make me not take the drink, the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. We are without defense against the first drink. Bam! We are without defense against the first drink. That's terrifying. If the drink and the drug does to me every single time what I've told you guys about, I either end up on Main and Hastings or in a back alley or destroying the relationships in my life or losing job after job and becoming broke and becoming unhealthy to a point that I'm 160 pounds, soaking wet, black eyes, sunken in cheeks and eyes. Like this, these are the things that happen. I should be terrified at reading this. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, I'm without defense against the first one. Holy shit. What we got to keep reading. What do I got to do to find a defense? Because this sucks. At this level, this sucks. Right? I can't remember how painful it was a couple days ago when I stopped using because of whatever, because, you know, I ended up in a cell and I couldn't use anymore. And it was painful, and I came out of it, and, you know, I was sick, I was dope sick, or whatever it was. You get through that for a few days, and then all of a sudden, and I see this in the treatment facilities all the time. I see it in the rooms all the time. People take chips, they take 30 days. Lots of guys taking 30 days. Lots of guys taking 60 days. A little bit less taking 90. And practically none taking 6 and 9 at times, right? Why is that? It's because I can't remember how shitty it was a week ago or a month ago. Yeah. 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 And for everyone on Zoom and in the pen, our guy there just said, and not only can he not remember how painful it was, but his brain actually tells him and reminds him of the good times over the bad times. And that's just one of those plausible excuses. That's just one aspect of the mental disease that we have, right? You know, I've been through so many different ones. Like when I was younger, it was like, oh, I was just young, you know, and that proved to be wrong. Or, oh, I'm living in the wrong place. I just need to move and get away from these people, you know. Or when I get out of jail, I'm not gonna go on the dope again, man, because, well, look where it got me, right? And I'm so happy to get out that I just want to celebrate. And that's what ends up happening, and I go right back sometimes. It's a scary, scary thing. And the next chapter that we're going to read, it talks about the delusion, right? That delusion has to be smashed. But how do we smash it? That's what we're talking about. We don't know yet. We have no clue. And I'm terrified at this point. And that's as simple as I'm going to get with it. The almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd into the mind, or, you know, or for the druggies, you know, even just a T3 for my headache, you know, or, you know, I'll just do a line instead of smoking a rock, right? Because I deserve it. The almost certain consequences that follow taking anything like that, a glass of beer, do not crowd into our mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted with the old threadbare idea, very threadbare, like hanging by a thread, the idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. I constantly lie to myself, and we're going to learn soon that that's because I can't stand the thought of being different. I can't stand coming to terms with being different and having to face this head on. Isn't that ironic? That's the same reason I started drinking in the first place, because I didn't like feeling different. Anyway, we'll leave that for a later date. There is a complete failure in the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. Now, that might sound ridiculous, right? Because we all know not to stick our hand on a hot stove, especially, you know, like think about that. The grill, it's red hot. We don't walk up and put our hand on there because it hurts. We learn that. Well, why do we drink and do drugs? Because it hurts worse, man. I'd take a burn off a stove any day over what I go through when I pick up a drink or drug. I'll tell you that right now. The alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, I love how they put that, in the most casual way, it won't burn me this time, and this is how. Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. How often have some of us begun to drink in this nonchalant way and after the third or fourth, pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, for God's sakes, how did I ever get started again? Have any of you ended up in a bar and went, you know, and you're drinking and you're like, I was sober an hour ago. What happened here?
Or the trap house.
Yeah, or any of that, right? Yeah, definitely the trap house. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy. It's sheer insanity is what it is. But we suffer it. Oh, where was I? Some of us there. For God's sakes, how did I ever get started again? Only to have that thought supplanted by, well, I'll stop with the sixth drink, or what's the use anyhow? So we start thinking, right? Anybody hear that saying, a head full of the program is no good for a belly full of booze, right? That's what starts happening. We actually start thinking about it now because we've been subjected to this a bit. And it bugs, it eats at us, right? So we're like, how did I end up here? Oh, well, because I'm already under, I've got it in me. I'm already under the sickness, right? I got the allergy, the physical allergy. There's no stopping it. But I want to think, you know, oh, well, maybe I'll stop after the next one. Like I still have some kind of control, which I do not. And I have the sixth or seventh, and I'm like, oh, whatever. What's the use? I'm drunk. It's all my mind, and it's all the physical allergy that's killing me, right? When this sort of thinking's fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. So what is that, the second time it's mentioned it already, or third? Whatever. They mentioned it a couple times, and this is very important, right? Because like I said a couple paragraphs earlier, we are without defense against the first drink. That's got to be terrifying to us, right? But they're starting to nudge me towards God right here. Gently, because like I say, I don't want nobody pushing God on me. It was freaky the first time I saw the basket going around. I'm like, yeah, it's just like church. You know, it's a cult, right?
Get ready for it at halftime. And it ain't church.
No, it ain't church. He's probably placed himself beyond human aid. So unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. These stark and ugly facts have been confirmed by legions. Anyone know what legions means? It's simply this, many. Legions of alcoholics throughout history, but for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop, but cannot. There is a solution. Oh, thank God. I needed to get here. There is a solution. There is a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, the leveling of our pride. What are we talking about there? Anybody?
What steps?
Yeah, let's talk on a step level. 4 and 4, right? Leveling of our pride, talking to someone, 4 and 5, right? Would you agree?
100%. It's
Okay.
4 and 5. In my opinion, it's 4 and 5.
The confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. 6 and 7, right? Because it tells us that we do that right after our 4 and 5, or right after our 5, right? After we go home and for the hour or whatever, and take the book off the shelf and blah, 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 right? But yeah, successful consummation. We need to recognize our defects. We need to realize that we're just, Bill was talking about this earlier, we're just as powerless over our defects of character as we were over the drugs and drink. It's very important to understand that. But we saw that it really worked in others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. So this is where, I gotta say this without naming it. We go to the rooms and we see people and we hear people talk, and I see my friend over here and he has a message of love and hope, and I like what he has, and then maybe he invites me out on a motorcycle ride, and we go out together and we pull over in the Kananaskis Valley and we look at these beautiful mountains and we talk about God, And I start to think that this is pretty cool. He's got something I want. I find it just as important. Like there's 3 sides to that triangle, guys, right? It's program, it's service, and it's fellowship. We need all of that. We need all of that. I think it's talking about that here. Where did I end off there? Yeah, right. Thank you. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us to do, pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. These tools right here. This is what we're all here to, I'm here to learn more about. I'm not here to teach. I'm just here to read and talk and hopefully learn some more. Because God knows I don't know very much. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a 4th dimension of existence which we had not even dreamed. Who doesn't know? Is there anyone that doesn't really know what the 4th dimension is? Should I explain it? Yeah. It talks
Tiffany?
about it. It talks about it in Bill's story, which we don't read until later. But it's a pretty good way to describe it. He says, I was soon to be catapulted. This is on page 8, 3/4 of the way down. I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the 4th dimension of existence. Here it is. I was to know peace, happiness, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. That's what I like to view as the 4th dimension. I know peace. I know happiness. I'm useful to others. My life keeps getting better and better. No, it doesn't say it's without problems. It just says that it keeps growing, right? So we pick up that spiritual toolkit. We do this work that's between 4 and 9, and then continues with 10, 11, and 12, and we start to feel that. It may not happen immediately, but it happens. I can tell you that. I can tell you. I live in that. It's beautiful. The great fact is just this and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today, the central fact, is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. How many of you believe that I think that God has entered my life? Thank you. I hope that's all of you, because I think I've talked about it quite a bit. There is no doubt in my mind. To what level it is, I have no idea. What God is, I have no idea. But I absolutely 100% believe that whatever it is, it's working in my life. And I can tell you that this is real. This is absolutely attainable. 6 months clean and sober. Look at this guy, smiling, happy. Love this man, you know? You're not on the street. Like this is God working in your life. Creator, love, whatever you want to call it. It's working because he's picking up the spiritual toolkit and he's doing the work. It's I could never have the life that I have today on my own. And it's told me that right here. I placed myself beyond human aid. Billy used to come up to me when I was still getting high. Hey, you want to meet for a coffee, Gord? Yeah, sure, Bill. Yeah, let's fucking meet. And we'd meet at Tim Hortons, and I'd right before I go in, yeah, hey, Bill, what's happening, man? And I had no idea I looked like that, but I'm pretty sure I did. Hey, Bill, what's up? Yeah. He's like, how you doing, Gord? Fucking life's great, man. Yeah. And he knew in that moment that I wasn't ready for help yet because I wasn't hurting enough, right?
I remember when you were going to kick one of those old timers' asses at the midnight meeting because he gave you shit about fucking coffee or something.
Yeah,
He's
he
like,
keeps
fuck,
telling
I'm
me
gonna
this.
kill this old guy, fuck's sakes.
He keeps telling me I don't remember that at all.
That's because you just finished doing fucking hoots in your truck, bro.
Yeah, probably.
Jesus.
Yeah.
You did. Like, I'm fucking not kidding you.
I know I did. You know, I did a lot of stuff, right? I sponsored guys while I was high. You know, I think I've told you all this already once, right? I did some stupid shit, and I had to make amends to a lot of different groups and people, right? And it took me years to do all my amends. Work. Today I get to enjoy the rocket of the fourth dimension, right? Because I did that work. And I had people like this who kept coming to me and showing me that life was worthwhile. You know, and that's what it's talking about. I'm sure you have more to add.
I do, but we'll do it after the break. Archie, you got a question? Quickly from you?
I actually love that because I'm gonna yeah, that's really cool. I had an old timer that used to say, if I don't drink, I won't get drunk. Have any of you heard me say this story? Yeah. And I used to, this guy drove me nuts, man. He's dead now, so I don't mind saying it, but I feel bad. Like, he's a good guy. But, you know, I was shit talking him after a meeting to one of my buddies one day. And fortunately, that buddy was a 12-step member, and he had some actual principles, and he was working. And he said, why don't you just go ask the guy what he means by it instead of being a prick and talking shit about him after the meeting? I'm like, what a novel idea. Okay. I'll give that a try. And so I went and asked him why he said that. And don't you think that you know, being more than just sober, not drinking, you know, isn't it important? And he said, yeah, Gord, I'll explain it to you. He's like, do you agree that if you take one drink, you lose all power and you end up drunk? I'm like, yeah, I 100% agree that. I fortunately understood that at that point. He said, and when you get drunk, you ruin all things meaningful in your life? I'm like, yes, I've actually proven that many times over and over again. He's like, right. So if I don't drink, I won't get drunk, I won't ruin all meaningful things in my life, right? I'm like, okay, that makes sense. He's like, but my most important thing is if I don't drink, I won't get drunk, and it will afford me one beautiful gift. And that gift is time. So thank you, Archie. That really put something in center for me. That gift is time. Time for me to learn. Time for me to gain a relationship with God. Time for me to repair damage I've caused. Time for me to learn who I am. So if I don't drink, I won't get drunk. I get time. So that's I think a good way to stop.
Okay, we'll come back in 15 minutes and then I'll beak off about this stuff. We'll get back to the podcast in a second. The opinions expressed on this podcast are solely of the guest sharing or myself. We have no affiliation with any 12-step or recovery program. And if you do like our work, please consider visiting BILLWARDLIFE and supporting what we do. Now back to the podcast. Okay, I'm going to get going where Gord started. I won't talk about a lot that he already talked about, but I'll just mention a couple things. So there's God in the program, right? And people often, don't like the God part. But there's a reason why we need God as alcoholics and addicts, right? And when you look at step 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. There's another line in a different chapter, which we'll touch on when we get to it. But, whatever the precise definition of the word may be, we call this insanity. Well, what is that? I pick up a drink knowing what's already going to happen. That's the insanity that step 2 is supposed to restore us to, that we're not going to pick it up, right? And it's not like we're resisting it, like, oh, fuck, I can't do that. It's like, no, You get the thought of maybe having a drink or a drug, but then because you're working like the aspects of the program, the thought is fleeting and it's lost and it just goes away and you're not like obsessing. Because I know when I used to obsess, I'd get the thought maybe at 9 a.m. and that thought was there all fucking day, man, until I got the ease and comfort that I had to succumb to, that I had no power over resisting. But as you work the program, and I don't mean just like coming to meetings and like living the philosophy of the program. I mean like the program, the directions in the book, and we will get to the directions. When we get to step 3, we're going to print off original manuscript because it has a different taste to it. And we'll use the original manuscript to go through step 3, which is really critical when I go through the steps with a real chronic alcoholic. I use the original manuscript step 3 because it has power to it. Whereas this one in the book it's been watered down a little bit and it's suggested, but the one in the original manuscript isn't. So anyway, why we need God is because of this paragraph here where Gord started reading. At a certain point, we will not have an effective mental defense. And it says at a certain point. When is the certain point? I might be able to bring into my consciousness the memory, the suffering, the humiliation, the things that I've done sometimes and not pick it up. Maybe I can do that 10 or 20 times in a row. Maybe I do it 500 times in a row. But what about that certain point where I will not bring into my memory the suffering and humiliation of a day, a week, a month ago? I don't know when the certain point is. That's why I need God. But just because you believe in God doesn't mean that you're going to stay sober and not be able to not take the drink. You'll probably still take the drink. Because if you're not working the program, then God becomes an effective mental defense. And if God's an effective mental defense, it's just the theory. And the theory of God will not keep you fucking sober. And at the end of this chapter, when we get to the Roland Hazard story, Carl Jung fucking points that out to Roland Hazard. And he says, although your religious convictions are good, you believe in God, Roland? Great. It does not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience that you fucking need. And the spiritual experience, back of the book, page 567, it says it's a personality change sufficient to overcome alcoholism. Because the personality change changes your brain, so the brain that you're living with that needs relief all the time, that lives in the malady, once you have the psychic change, you got a different brain. It doesn't need the relief. And you're living on a different basis of life, right? You went from ego to altruism. You're living way different. So that's important to know why we need God. And God doesn't come just because you go to meetings. God doesn't come just because you understand some philosophy about Jesus Christ or fucking meditation philosophy or yoga or working out at the gym. And then down here, 3/4 of the way down. It won't burn me this time, so here's how. Or perhaps what? He doesn't fucking think at all. What about when that happens? You're fucked. Perhaps he doesn't think at all. That's why we need God. Because the moment when I don't think at all and I get the insane idea to drink, there's something with the power that I've accessed through the work and the steps that allows me to see the insanity of that. And then I don't. But it's not like I'm resisting, like I said. It's just the thought goes away. And I can move on with my day and not really think about that again. That's the power of fucking God.
It's beautiful.
But what I want to talk about here in this part, this paragraph here, it won't burn me this time, so here's how. How often have we begun to drink in this nonchalant way, and after the 3rd or 4th pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, for fuck's sakes, how did I ever get started again? Only to have that thought supplanted, well, I'll stop with the 6th drink, or what's the use anyhow? So earlier you heard me talk about at a certain point we have no effective mental defense against the first think. And the main problem of the alcoholic centers in our mind. And that's the truth. And it's the think, what thought, right? So when I look at this paragraph and I take it to more of a design for living or more a defective character, it's like, okay, I'm just living life and I'm just thinking in this nonchalant way. And after the third or the fourth, I pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, how did this get started? So it's kind of like, let's use anger or let's use lust. I'll start with anger. It's like, okay, I'm listening to somebody, I'm untreated, I don't have any program, or I have the theory of the program, but I'm self-willing the principles into my affairs, but anger's still fucking a big issue for me. So I'm sitting here and I'm in a group of people and I'm listening to some guy's fucking opinion that I do not like and I don't want to hear it. And I'm the guy sitting at the bar, but with my thoughts. And then I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just going to fucking say something to this guy because I don't like what he's saying. And so then I say, you know what, bro? I think you're fucking totally out to lunch. And that's all I was going to say. I just wanted to express my opinion. I think you're fucking out to lunch. And then he says something back. And then I start arguing with him. And now I'm the guy at the bar going, how the fuck did this happen? I just wanted to say one little thing. That's it. And then I'm the guy that says, you know what, motherfucker? Now you're going to get it. And I'm going to double barrel him with my words. You're a goof and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm double barreling him with my words. And maybe it even turns physical. And that is how it works with our thinking. And if you're not aware of that first thought, you'll take it to the guy pounding at the bar going, how did I get here? By wanting to express your viewpoint. And then you'll be the guy double barreling them with your words because you succumb to the desire again. You have no power to resist your anger. And you put that in the alcoholic cycle. And what do you get out of that? You get a sense of power and you get a sense of control. And then you're done and you're like, fuck, I don't want to be like that. But you went on the spree of anger. And then you come out of it and you emerge remorseful. And later you're sitting there going, fuck, I didn't want to do that. With a firm resolution not to do it again. I'm not doing that again. I'm fucking, that's enough. I'm not being angry like that ever again. And then what? It's repeated over and over and over. And then what happens? Then you drink. Why? Because you're living in the malady. You're living in restless, irritable discontent. You will drink again. Right? That's how it goes. Now I'm going to use lust. Okay. Okay. This is one I made up, so don't think that it's true. Okay. Okay. I'm sitting there and I'm hanging out with my buddy and we're both sober and, you know, I don't really have a program, but I think I do. And, you know, I'm sitting there and his sister comes in and his sister's 18 and she's fucking a smoke show. And we're talking and I'm just like, holy fuck. And I'm trying not to watch her, right? And resisting this whole situation, right? But she's pretty friendly and she's talking to me and blah, blah, blah. And my buddy's, you know, none the wiser. And his phone rings and it's one of his sponsees. And he's like, dude, I got to go. I got to do this. I got to do a 12-step call. My sponsee's struggling. I'll be back in a bit. And my buddy's sister's sipping on a couple drinks and blah, blah, blah. And then next thing you know, it's just me and her. And then she sits down beside me and she puts her leg on me. And I'm just like, fuck. And I'm the guy that's like, okay, I'm just gonna, you know, not do anything. And then she puts her leg on me and then she starts getting closer and snuggling me. And I'm like, fuck, I'm the guy at the bar going, how the fuck am I getting here? I should tell her to get off of me. And I should say, I can't do this. But I'm not going to say anything because I'm powerless over my desire for lust. And then she starts taking down my pants and giving me a blowjob. And then I'm the guy at the bar going, fuck, how did I get here? Like, I've destroyed my friendship possibly. This is my buddy's girlfriend. And then I'm like, what the fuck? I'm just going to bang her. What the fuck? I'm already here now. I may as well just bang her. And then I do that. And then my life's fucked. My buddy hates me. She's fucking, you know, said that I made the moves and fucking my life is fucked. Why? Because I don't have the power to say no to that. And I didn't take initiative on the first thought. And my life turns to hell because of that. And then if I'm probably drinking after that, right? So like this is the power of our minds and why it's so important to be able to control the first think. The first think comes through using God to help us. So does that make sense to you guys? Okay. And that's really the crux of this program, and the crux of this study is way more about that as we go through the next number of chapters. That is the main focus of our big book study, is defective character. But we have to go through this first. But if you do go through step 1, you can see how the defective character is all through that. You just got to change drink to think. Okay, and when this sort of thinking is fully established, the individual with the alcoholic tendencies of anger or lust or judgment or gambling or self-pity or people-pleasing your wife or people-pleasing whoever, these are like alcoholic tendencies, man, okay? And we have placed ourselves beyond human aid. No human can tell us how to change that. Our defense for those things must come from a higher power. And anyone that knows me knows I emphasize step 6 in all of the work that I do, all of my meetings and sponsorship stuff that I'm able to give my words to. It's about step 6, because any person capable of enough willingness and honesty to try repeatedly step 6 on all his faults without reservation, has indeed come a long way spiritually. You will grow spiritually by implementing the processes of step 10, where step 6 is actually worked. And why it's the keys to the kingdom? Because that's where you fucking change who you are. That's where you enter into the 4th dimension. What up, Tom? Right. Yeah, if you don't make the changes, you're just still a sober horse thief, right? I don't want to be a sober horse thief. I don't want to be fucking miserable. Spiritually sick. Anyway, these stark and ugly facts of unwilling to work on your defective character have been confirmed by legions of alcoholics. Hey, Arch? Archie's just nodding and grinning and smiling. But for the grace of God, there would have been thousands of more convincing demonstrations. So many want to stop, but they cannot. There is a solution. Almost none of us like, so I got a little bit different take than Gord on this line, okay? None of us like the self-searching leveling of our pride, step 4, and the confessions of our shortcomings, step 5. Which the process requires. Which process? First of all, staying fucking sober. You will not stay sober if you don't do the fucking 4 and 5. That this process requires for successful consummation. It means beginning. This is just a beginning. And then when you go to step 5 and you look at the literature of step 5, you can flip where you don't have to. I'm on it, 75. We can look the world in the eye. We can be alone at perfect peace and ease. Our fears will fall from us. We begin to feel the nearness of our Creator. We may have had certain spiritual beliefs, but now we begin to have a spiritual experience. The feeling that the drink problem, the think problem, the drink problem will often come strongly. We feel we are on the broad highway, because we're removing all the things that are blocking God from us in the 4 and the 5. And that is critical to sobriety. But then, we're walking hand in hand with Spirit of the universe. So there is a feeling. And the thing about step 5, and maybe I'm letting the cat out of the bag too soon here. The thing about step 5, many people have taken step 5 and fucking had a big relief and stop doing the steps. Anyone do the step 5 and quit doing the steps? What happened? We'll go with Lee. What happened? Right, you ended up drinking, okay? Jordan, relapse. Tommy? Okay, Tommy said it, treatment center after treatment center took him to step 5, and every time he fucking relapsed. Because that's not enough. But what happens is you get a spiritual experience after the 5. And you feel so good. You're like, I've had the fucking spiritual awakening. I feel good. I'm never drinking again. Put me on a lie detector test. I'm not drinking again ever. Little do you fucking know. You're drinking again. Because the 6 is the most important. Once you figure out the 6, then you can start growing closer to God. But after the 5, it's just relief. But it's an important step. And like for a chronic alcoholic that we work with, it's very important to get somebody from 0 to step 5 very quickly. Not fucking around waiting. Don't break up the step 5s. We'll get to all that later. But anyway, so process requires for a successful beginning. The only thing that I'll talk about quickly is where Gord talked about the 4th dimension. What did I want to say? I can't remember. Yes, question, Aaron.
So you said here there's a leveling of our pride, confession of shortcomings. That's step 1 of 5. I don't know if Gord said which the process with pride for a successful consummation. Is that like going 6 and 7? Or is that all that whole paragraph?
To me, and I'll let Gord speak for himself, to me it's 4 is leveling of our pride, self-searching, writing out, leveling of your pride, seeing the truth in your 4th column, and seeing your 4th and 5th column in your sex conduct and the fears. The confession of shortcomings is really you're confessing. You're doing a confessing in your 5, right? That's what I believe. Gord, any?
Yeah, I mean, I may be wrong. Like I say, this is just my opinions that I'm stressing, but I've always thought of it as follows. This self-searching, which was my step 4. I sought it out. The leveling of my pride, it didn't take much leveling of my pride to write a step 4. It took a lot of leveling of my pride to go and admit this shit to another human being.
Roger.
So I think that that's the step 5. And then for the confession, this could also be step 5, I guess. But for me, the confession of my shortcomings, it starts to mention shortcomings, which, yes, of course, we learn in our 4 and 5. But the confession of my shortcomings, when I start moving into 6, for me, that's what it is. It's about recognizing I need God's help, that I can't overcome my own defects of character. We're real close on this, but that's what I said, you know.
And really, we're splitting hairs with that because we're both kind of saying 6 is very important.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up this kit of spiritual tools. And that's kind of the truth. And Hector can kind of vouch for this, as we've been talking about Hector. He saw other people with this kit of spiritual tools, and he knew that there was nothing left for him to do but pick them up and fucking start learning about them. And then so far, he's not out of the woods yet. He's got fucking 6 months, right? He's not even out of his mom's fucking womb. He's not even fully formed as a baby yet. But he's looking pretty good. And I really believe, like, when you're 3 months sober, you're like 3 months in a mom's womb. You're just forming who you are. 6 months, you're 6 months in the mom's womb. 9 months, you're a baby coming out of the womb, and you need to still suck on the tit, and you need your fellowship, and you need to be coddled and held, and you need the love that a baby needs, right? When you're 2 years sober, you're like a toddler, terrible 2. You think you can climb the stairs and you fall down. This is where your sex conduct comes in and all your other stupid decisions, making decisions to go up north before you even understand the program. And then you're back here anyway with no job. And so it didn't really fucking matter. Right? Jordan. So, like, and this stuff doesn't come just because I want to say it and be arrogant. It comes out of bitter experience as watching people fucking die and seeing things in the program through sponsorship, through watching and being around, right? These things I say for a reason. And when I said earlier about the little voice in the back of the head, these are the things that I say that kind of resonate with people at the times that they need them. And they do get mad at me. And there's a shirt out there, it says fucking Bill. And that's why they made the shirt. Go ahead.
Where can I buy one of those?
And it's pink. Okay, so that's really about all I have. I can't remember what I wanted to say about the fourth dimension, as Gord made many good comments about it, but that's okay. So you finished Never Do by Ourselves, right?
Correct.
Okay. If you are seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and if we had passed into the region from which there was no return through human aid, we had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation the best we could, and the other was to accept spiritual help. And we did because we honestly fucking wanted to, and we were willing to make the effort. You can need this program, you can want this program, but without the effort, it doesn't happen. It's not for people that need it or want it, it's for people that do it. Even if you didn't want it and you didn't need it and you did it, you would probably be launched into the fourth dimension and never drink. This is a story, which is an amazing story. The stories in the big book, a lot of people just read them and they're just stories. The stories are very, very important, and this story is massively important. It kind of encapsulates this whole program in one little story. And I'll give you some background. This is Roland Hazard. Roland Hazard was an alcoholic back in the 30s that was shipped over to Europe by his family, because his family was really rich and they had the ability to pay somebody to help him. Like, I'm just going to say this, I don't know how much it was, but like $1 million, right? And they called Sigmund Freud, who was one of the world's most renowned psychologists at the time, and they asked Sigmund Freud if Roland, their son, could see him because he needed help and they didn't want their son to die. And Sigmund Freud said, no, I'm too busy. The thing about Sigmund Freud is he believes in will. He believes in the power of the mind and willpower. Thank God it didn't fucking work out with Sigmund Freud. So then their second choice was Carl Jung. And Carl Jung worked with Sigmund Freud, but they had their differences. And one of the big differences they had, and Carl Jung was a student of Freud, but Jung believed in the spiritual aspect where Freud didn't. So thank God that it worked that way. And if you know the history of AA and how the big book kind of came to be and all of the things that had to happen for this to be here and us to be here, it would blow your mind. Like, I'll give you one other part of it. Bill W.'s wife, Lois, had 3 miscarriages. All she wanted was a kid. She had 3 miscarriages, so no kid. And then she's like, okay, well, I'm not going to have a kid, so I'm going to adopt. So she tried to adopt. And then one of her references gave a bad reference and they wouldn't let her adopt. But if had Bill W. had one of those kids come into his life, we may not be here today. And so the way I look at it is Creator already had Bill W. ordained that this was going to happen because the world needed Bill W. to do what Bill W. did so that we could live. So we had a way out. And when you look at, like, there's many aspects of the history of the big book and how it came to be that if anything was out of place, then we wouldn't be here. And one of the other things that could have been out of place is Roland Hazard got sober through the Oxford group, and him and Seabrook Graves, another guy that they grew up with, went to the courthouse to get Ebby Thatcher, who is the one who six-stepped Bill W., right? And Seabrook Graves and Roland Hazard, Seabrook's uncle or grandpa or something was the judge, and they were going to put Ebby into the insane asylum for good. But then Ebby and Roland, or Seabrook Graves and Roland, Seabrook and Roland were like, can we just have Ebby and we'll take care of him. We'll watch him. We'll put him under our wing. And back in the 30s, you know, the judge said, okay, well, I'm going to let you take this crazy fucking lunatic and see what you can do. And then they six-stepped Ebby. And Ebby got sober off of a spiritual solution, who was also another hopeless alcoholic. And then he went and six-stepped Bill W. And part of those stories are in this book, and we will get to them later. But like, if any of these things were out of line, let's say Ebby ended up going to the insane asylum. Well, Bill W. wouldn't have got 12-step or 6-step by Ebby. And then we still wouldn't be here. And there's many of these little things, right?
Take that a step further and think about the first 100 that wrote this book together.
Well, look around the room. Like, can you imagine 100 of us trying to write a book together and agreeing on it? You can't tell me that God wasn't involved in that.
Okay, let's read this. Gord, you go ahead. You're a better reader.
All right. Where are we?
Certain American businessman.
Right. Story.
A certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. So in other words, he's a good guy, and he was very good at his job, right? For years, he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrist. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of a celebrated physician, the psychiatrist Dr. Young, who prescribed for him. Though experience had made him skeptical, he finished his treatment with unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. That's exactly what we've been talking about, right? Pounding our fists on the bar. How did I get here again? It's exactly the same thing that happened to Roland Hazard. For further detail, Roland got out. He finished the treatment with Dr. Young. He was about to go back to the ship. I think he borrowed a bicycle or something and was riding a bicycle down to the shipyard to go back home to America, confident. That's a flag for us. Confident usually means ego and self-reliance, right? And the background is also that on the way to the shipyard to go home, he got drunk. He saw a bar and went in and got drunk. There's a few things in what I just read is that cockiness, that confidence, unusual confidence. He felt proud of himself. I don't know about you guys, but whenever I let my ego start running the show, there is a problem. There is going to be bigger problems to come. He was skeptical because he'd never stayed sober before. But you know what? He was under the help of this famous psychiatrist, so I'm pretty sure that he thought that he was cured. And that is also a flag, right? His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, and here's a really, really important part, he believed he had acquired such a profound knowledge of himself and the inner workings of his mind that relapse was unthinkable. So he started to believe that self-awareness, self-knowledge was going to prevent him from drinking. We have already told each other, we've all discussed that we are at this point beyond human aid, right? So I love how this story starts to really work in the self-knowledge doesn't work. We've already talked about willpower and how that doesn't work. Now we're talking about self-knowledge also doesn't work. So he returned to his doctor, Dr. Young, whom he admired, and asked him point blank, why could he not recover? He wished above all things to regain self-control. He just wanted to be normal, right? I want to be able to control this. And we're learning that that's not possible for people like us. He seemed quite rational and well-balanced with respect to other problems, yet he had no control whatsoever over alcohol. Why was this? He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and guess what? He got it. In the doctor's judgment, He was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. And that was a great physician's opinion. That basically, this guy could not live his life unless he had people that would beat him up if he tried to drink or lock himself up so he couldn't get to drink. But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth where other free men go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude.
Hang on.
Yep.
What's the attitude? Anyone? God fucking centered. The attitude is God, man.
Yeah.
You know,
God reliance.
the other day, I don't know if it was here. I read the book in my mind all the time. So if you can think honestly, search diligently within yourself, then if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. The consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. That's a We Agnostics paragraph. It's with this attitude, you can't fail. With the attitude of God, you can't fail. The consciousness of that belief will come to you. Whatever the belief is, it will turn into the consciousness. But you got to be able to think honestly, and you got to be able to search diligently within yourself. Then, if you wish, you can join us on the broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. That's a promise of step 2. So the attitude is God, you know, and it talks about that in step 11 and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, sorry, Gord.
Shane has his hand up.
Everybody, my name
Shane,
is
go
Shane.
ahead.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Shane. I'm a recovering member of Any Anonymous. Quick question for you guys. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I've always wondered about this story. So are they missing some of that story? How does he go from fucking being utterly hopeless, his doctors dealt with him, he's fucked, and then bam, to follow a few simple rules? How does he get 12 steps? How does he get God? How does he fucking go anywhere a free man can go? It doesn't say that in that story, and I've always just wondered that.
It's in other literature, brother.
Okay.
AA Comes of Age is one, I think, that it explains a lot more on that.
And I would assume he got 6-stepped, not 12-stepped at that point. But yeah, there's just missing pieces that they didn't put in the story that tell the whole story.
But you know how he did it. I know you, Shane. You know exactly how he did it.
Okay, sorry, Gord.
No, you're weird. Okay, where am I?
Simple attitude.
Thank you. Now I gotta find that. Thank you. Some of our alcoholic readers may think they can do without spiritual help.
So let us tell you the rest of the conversation our friend had with his doctor. The doctor said, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover where that state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you." Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. That's pretty profound, hey? When a doctor of that value looks at you and says, "I've never seen anyone recover that's like you. You're screwed." Right? I mean, that is a real step 1, if you ask me. That is what we need. Yeah. There you go. Because he came to terms with that. He surrendered to that. Yeah. He said to the doctor, "Is there no exception?" "Yes," replied the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. So they're not usual thing, right? Like they're pretty rare. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men, are suddenly cast to one side. Everything they believed and thought and did, they have put over here and completely changed the way they view things. I ask guys, when I sponsor them, to write this in the front of their book, and this is why. Set aside everything you know about life, love, God, and morality. Set it aside. Open your mind to something new. And that's what the doctor, I believe, is talking about. Cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. So the more that they practice this thing, practice these principles in all our affairs. More we practice. We don't get to know this stuff immediately the day that we do go through it with somebody. We practice this. I'm practicing this. I fingered a guy on the way over here today. You know? But I stopped being an asshole pretty quickly after that because I had to say a prayer because I realized I was doing that, right? We practice this. And these motives begin to dominate them. We start becoming better human beings as we work on our defects. And more importantly, as the more I let God into my life. In fact, I have been trying to produce some such emotional rearrangement within you, Roland. With many individuals, the methods which I employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description. Upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that after all, he was a good church member. Okay. This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctors telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in this case, they did not spell the necessary vital spiritual experience. It's not enough. Being religious, believing in God, is not enough for us to have this emotional and displacement. It's not enough for us to change. And that's why we need action. And what is the action? Steps 4 through 9, for sure. That's where we start to gain connection. When we start clearing the wreckage, we start learning about ourselves, we start recognizing, bye ladies, we start recognizing our defects of character, the ability that we need God to help us, our creator, our love, whatever you want to do, whatever your higher power is, we need that assistance, and we need that assistance to help us become better human beings. And then we also start to gain an ability or a desire to want to clean up the past, to be able to take on the brotherly love and make amends properly by looking at people with compassion. This is all God, and that all comes from working those steps, and that's the action we need to start having a real connection. You got some stuff to say about that?
Roger. Okay, I'm going to give you that whole story in my own version. Okay, so this guy, hopeless alcoholic, parents pay Carl Jung $1 million to help him. He goes over there, learns everything he can, self-knowledge. He knows the inner workings of his mind. He's sure that he can be on guard and never drink again. Like Gord said, he gets to the boatyard, boom, he's fucking drunk. Stumbles back to Carl Jung and goes, dude, what the fuck? I fucking drank. I didn't think I'd drink. And Carl Jung looks at him and he's like, oh, you're one of those. Roland's like, I'm one of what? He's like, you're one of those. One of what? You're one of those hopeless alcoholics. Although the methods I employ, psychological, Western way of doing it, how they do it today, psychiatry, although the methods I employ work with many of the heavy drinkers, I've never been successful with an alcoholic of your description, the real alcoholic. I don't have anything for you, bro. I can't help you. He's like, what do you mean, doc? You're my only fucking hope. Yeah. He's like, dude, I got nothing for you, man. You're one of those. I can help the heavy drinkers and some of the other people, but you guys are kind of fucked. And Roland's like, dude, help me, man. Please help me. You're my only hope. I've never been sober this long. He's like, no, I can't. And then the gates of hell closed on him with a clang. His only hope was this human power. It's the only thing that ever helped him. And then it didn't help him. And then the doctor is saying, I don't have anything. And the gates of hell closed on Roland with a clang. That's a gut level concession of like, I'm fucked. That's what step one in this literature does. It convinces the alcoholic or the addict that they don't have another fucking choice. That's why we need God. And then the doctor, he's like, okay. He's like, I've heard of these things. They're a phenomenon. I've seen very little of them, if any, but I've heard of them. He's like, what is it? What is it? He's like, dude, they're called a vital spiritual experience. He's like, what is it? What is it? Tell me. Carl Jung's like, okay, fucking listen, bro. I'm going to tell you what it is. Open your fucking ears and listen. So Roland's sitting there and he's like opening his ears. He's like, fucking, because he doesn't want to die, right? He's listening to this guy. And he says, emotional displacements and rearrangement, ideas, emotions, and attitudes that have been the guiding force of your fucking life, bro. The way you live, the way your brain is, has to be cast aside, and you have to allow something new to run your life. He said, this is called a vital spiritual experience, bro. And Roland's like, fuck, thank God. I'm fucking Christian. My parents are Christian. I believe in God. Thank God. And then in the book, I love how it wrote it here. He destroyed his hopes. He said, bro, you're so fucked. That God that you're believing in, that theory of God that you're living in, that's not enough. That ain't going to do the trick. And then Roland was like, okay, man, I get you, bro. And what is the emotional displacements, ideas, emotions, and attitudes that need to be exposed, looked at, and cast aside? And how do we even do that? Well, that's what the step 3 does. You can believe in God all you want. And upon that simple cornerstone of belief in God, or willing to believe, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure could be built, but it's not built if you just believe. How do you build the structure? You have to take step 3 and put it into fucking action and understand how that's done. That's done through a step 10. That is where step 3 lives, and that's where step 3 is live action. I got to be aware of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and follow the process. Follow the directions. You can spend all your recovery, if you want, trying to self-will your honesty and your niceness and your compassion all you fucking want. Be prepared for a long fucking road of suffering. Is that funny?
I've also lived it. Yeah.
So I'm big on the directions, right? And the reason I talked about the original manuscript when we get to 3 is because it's fucking full. It says, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our directions. If you want what we have and you're willing to go to any length to get it, then you are ready to follow directions. In this piece here, it says, clear-cut directions are showing how we have recovered. Step 10 says, if you have followed directions carefully, you will felt the flow of a spirit into you. To some extent, you'll become God conscious. You have begun to develop this vital sixth sense. Vital meaning important, but means fucking vitality, living like not just being sober, like living. And so that happens in your first 4 and 5. You get to expose some of these things. You get to be aware of these things through your 6 worked in your 10. You're constantly watching what you're thinking and what you're feeling. You know, when you read the literature in the step 10 and the 12 and 12, it talks about semi-annual and annual house cleanings. And things that are really hard to get over, you have regular visits with your sponsor. Anger, sex conduct, whatever, and you become willing. And if you don't have the willingness to let some of these things go that are objectionable, then you pray for the willingness until it comes. These are all directions hidden in between fluffy philosophical bullshit that's in the book. So I like to get rid of the fluffy philosophical shit and this warm, fuzzy feeling that God's going to keep me sober. That's what this book can be. Yeah. We could wish to be moral. We could wish to be philosophically comforted. We could will these things with all of our might, but the needed power is not there. Well, that's exactly what the book is about. Its main object is to allow you to fucking get in a relationship with God through the directions in between all the fluffy stuff. So essentially, go ahead.
And every personal story in this book is also about how those people found a relationship with God.
That's it. So this isn't about not drinking. This isn't about not using. It's about building a relationship with God by removing all the things that aren't God out of you so you can get in touch with, what does it say in the spiritual experience? The unsuspected inner resource. And this resource is connected to that source. So this is a of source. And it connects us. It connects us all. So we're going to finish off this chapter quick because we got the meat and potatoes out. And at least if we're done, we can start fresh next week. So just bear with us for like however long it takes me to read through the rest. As long as I don't talk. Okay. Here was the terrible dilemma in which our friend found himself when he had the extraordinary experience, which was, we all have already told you, made him a free man. We in turn sought the same escape with all the desperation of drowning men. What seemed at first a flimsy reed has proved to be the loving and powerful hand of God. A new life has been given us, or if you prefer, a design for living that really works. The flimsy reed is the program. The flimsy reed is, I doubt this shit's going to work for me, but I'll try it.
Because nothing else has.
And then it turns into this fourth dimension, this powerful, loving hand of God. It's a fucking amazing journey. And I know what Gord was back in the fourth dimension stuff, where he talked about the fourth dimension. The fourth dimension is directly correlated to what we read in a session or two ago on page 164, where it talked about, and you can join us in the fellowship of the Spirit. And here you will find some of us. Like the fellowship of the Spirit is where the fourth dimension exists. But you got to abandon yourself to God. You got to clear away the wreckage of the past, give freely of what you find, admit your shortcomings to him and your fellows, and blah, 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 the rest of that paragraph. That's where it exists, through a continuous action. Okay? The distinguished American psychologist William James, in his book Varieties of Religious Experience, indicates a multitude of ways which men have discovered God. We have no desire to convince anyone that there's only one way by which faith can be acquired. If what we have learned and felt and seen means anything at all, it means all of us, whatever race, creed, color, are the children of a living Creator, with whom we may form a relationship upon simple and understandable terms, as soon as we are willing enough and honest enough to try. Those having religious affiliations will find nothing disturbing to their beliefs or ceremonies. There is no friction among us over such matters. We think it no concern of ours what religious bodies our members identify themselves with as individuals. This should be entirely a personal affair, which each one decides for himself in the light of past associations or a present choice. Not all of us join religious bodies, but most of us favor such memberships. In the following chapter, there appears to be an explanation of alcoholism, the next chapter, as we understand it. Then the chapter addressed to the agnostic. Many who were once in this class are now among our members. Surprisingly enough, we find such convictions no great obstacle to a spiritual experience. Further on, clear-cut directions are given showing how we have recovered. Further on, clear-cut directions. It's not here. Step one isn't about directions. No. Step one is about accepting what the illness is, okay? Crystal, can you grab that box and send it around? I forgot to do it at halftime. That's for the basket. Any donations are appreciated. Don't think you have to give anything because you don't, but any funds will go towards recovering costs, and they will go towards future endeavors to try to carry a good message. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. These are followed by 42 personal experiences. Gord talked about the stories. There's 42 stories in the back of the book. Each individual in the personal stories described in his own language from his own point of view the way he established a relationship with God. All the stories aren't about how the person quit drinking. No. It's how they built a relationship with God. As a result, they never drank again, and they lived vitally or beautifully. These give a fair cross-section of our membership and a clear-cut idea what has actually happened in their lives. We hope no one will consider these self-revealing accounts in bad taste. Our hope is that many alcoholic men and women desperately in need will see these pages, and we believe that it is only by fully disclosing ourselves and our problems, boom, fully disclosing ourselves, being honest, being vulnerable, saying things you never would say, and really talking about your life, your issues, your shortcomings, your pain, your hurt, and that they will be persuaded to say, yes, I am one of those two. I must have this thing. Anything? Boom. Hold on. Okay, thanks everyone. We'll see you next Thursday.